Imagine standing on a deck, just the vast starlit ocean stretching out everywhere. No screens, no satellites telling you where you are.
Yeah, for thousands of years, that was just reality for seafarers, wasn't it? Venturing out way beyond sight of land.
Their compasses were the stars, their maps, the currents, the clouds. Welcome to the Deep Dive from the All Sorts podcast. Today, we're charting a course back through time, really getting into the fascinating world of, well, star compasses and ancient navigation.
It's amazing stuff.
You, our listeners, shared some truly brilliant material with us, and our mission today is to navigate through it. We want to unpack how different cultures across the globe, long before GPS maps started finding their way.
Using the stars, their environment, it's incredibly ingenious.
Absolutely. We're talking Polynesians, the Islamic world's navigators, maybe even the Vikings. We'll dig into academic studies, historical accounts, really try to grasp the sophisticated knowledge involved.
It really is humbling when you think about it. The sheer, boldness of these voyages, considering the tech they didn't have.
Right, like take the Polynesians exploring the Pacific. That ocean is, over 63 million square miles. Huge.
Immense. And their success wasn't built on instruments like we think of them, but on this incredibly deep, nuanced understanding of the world around them.
Okay, let's really dive into that. Polynesian navigation across this massive ocean without any modern kit. How did they even start to, get their bearings?
Well, at the core of it was something we call the star compass. Now, this wasn't like a physical thing you hold.
Right, not like a magnetic compass.
No, it was a mental model.
Yeah.
Really sophisticated. They pictured the entire horizon, the whole circle, divided into 32 distinct segments.
32, wow.
Yeah, and each of those segments was tied, intrinsically linked to specific stars as they rose and set. Those stars became their direction markers.
So it was like having this living, moving map in the sky above them, the cognitive power that must have taken.
Oh, absolutely.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it, about our own abilities maybe getting a bit dulled by relying on phones all the time?
That's a really interesting point. The sheer memorization is astounding. Key stars, obviously like Polaris up north, the Southern Cross down south, they gave fixed points, cardinal directions.
The main ones.
But it went way beyond that. Navigators memorized whole sequences of stars that would appear along specific routes, island to island.
Whole sequences.
And they could also gauge a star's altitude, its height above the horizon, to work out their latitude, their north-south position.
How did they do that accurately? Just by eye?
Essentially, yes, sometimes aided by simple hand measurements. They use this technique, sometimes called sailing down the latitude. Basically, keep a specific star at a consistent height, and you stay on the same east-west line over huge distances.
That is extraordinary, relying completely on memory, observation across all that water. But what about when it got cloudy? When the stars vanished? Surely they didn't always have clear skies.
No, absolutely not. And that's where their connection to the environment, their deep ecological knowledge really shines. They were masters at reading ocean swells.
Swells, right. Not just the local choppy waves.
Exactly. Swells are different. They're generated by distant weather, sometimes thousands of miles away, and they travel consistently in one direction for ages. Much more reliable than wind-driven waves for keeping course.
So they could feel the direction of the swell in the canoe.
Precisely. They learned to read these subtle patterns, feel them through the hull, use them to hold their course even with no visual cues. The ocean itself sort of became a compass.
The ocean as a compass. That's a beautiful way to put it. And they used other natural signs too, I gather.
Oh, absolutely. Everything was information. They watched birds very closely. Land-based birds flying out in the morning, back in the evening. That meant land was near.
Makes sense.
They also read cloud formations. Certain types of clouds often hang over islands, or they'd look for the faint green reflection of shallow lagoons on the underside of clouds. It was holistic. A fluency in how the sea, sky, land, life, how it all connects.
You mentioned the Hokulea voyage earlier. Why was that specific journey so important?
The Hokulea. That 1976 voyage was huge. It was a replica traditional canoe, sailed from Hawaii to Tahiti.
Without instruments.
Totally. Without modern instruments. It was this powerful, practical demonstration that these ancient techniques weren't just stories. They were a fully functional, incredibly sophisticated system that actually worked. It proved the depth of that ancestral knowledge.
And all this knowledge passed down. It wasn't written down, was it?
Mostly no. It was primarily an oral tradition. Meticulously taught, refined, passed on generation after generation through chants, stories, intense training at sea.
Wow, that says a lot about memory and how they structured their societies to preserve that knowledge.
It really does. And we should also mention the Lapita people, who were navigating and settling islands in Melanesia even earlier, spreading eastward. They were the precursors in many ways.
It really forces you to rethink, the comparison between these navigators and early European explorers. It's a different kind of mastery, isn't it?
Definitely. European navigation increasingly relied on developing instruments, right? Whereas the Polynesians cultivated this incredibly deep, intuitive, integrated understanding of the environment itself.
Uh-huh.
And it's interesting, a lot of their voyaging happened fairly close to the equator, say within 20 degrees north or south.
Why is that significant?
Well, near the equator, stars tend to rise and set more vertically, almost straight up and straight down. That makes pinpointing their rising and setting points on the horizon, those points used in the star compass, much clearer and more precise. Gives you very distinct directional markers.
Ah, I see. That makes sense. There's also that story about Captain Cook, right? Encountering some Tahitians just adrift hundreds of miles from anywhere.
Yes. That famous anecdote, it really highlights how these vast distances might have been crossed, sometimes intentionally, sometimes maybe less so. It hints at how remote islands could have been populated.
And Cook had help from a Tahitian navigator, didn't he? Tupaya.
Tupia, exactly. An incredible navigator. His knowledge of the Pacific Islands was just vast. He drew charts from memory that astonished Cook, even if Cook didn't always fully grasp the system Tupaya was using. His mental map was immense.
And what about those hints of contact with South America, the chicken bones, the legends? Any truth to that, do we think?
Well, it's still debated, definitely, but the evidence is tantalizing. You've got chicken bones found in Chile that predate Columbus and seem genetically linked to Polynesian chickens.
Really? Chicken bones?
Yeah. And then you have oral traditions, legends from places like Mangareva, talking about voyages far to the east. So while we can't prove it conclusively, there's certainly a strong suggestion their reach might have extended even further than we typically imagine.
Okay, so from the vast Pacific, let's shift our focus. Let's head over to the Indian Ocean and the rich history of Islamic navigation. Sounds like another tradition deeply rooted in understanding the stars.
Oh, absolutely. And recent finds, like these 19th century Arabic nautical manuscripts, have really opened a window onto this tradition. It flourished for centuries, blending ancient seafaring skills with the fabric of Muslim life around the Indian Ocean rim.
So celestial navigation obviously connects heaven and earth, but was early Islamic navigation primarily religious in its motivation, or more practical?
That's a key point. The early foundations, especially the knowledge documented by those famous pilots like Ibn Majid and Al-Mari back in the 15th, 16th centuries, it was heavily based on practical, empirical knowledge. Stuff inherited from ancient seafaring cultures all around the region, Persia, India, Indonesia, East Africa.
So shared knowledge.
Very much so. It was focused on the craft, using a lead line for depth, knowing the currents, following familiar stars, the real nuts and bolts of getting a ship from A to B safely.
Okay. But you mentioned an integration of Islamic elements over time. How did that actually happen? How did it show up in their manuals or practices?
It seems to have been a gradual process. Earlier texts might, mention Noah as the first shipbuilder, sort of setting a religious context. Or they'd highlight how watching the stars was important for finding the Qibla, the direction of Mecca for prayer at sea.
Ah, the Qibla, right.
And you also see things like the Azib al-Bor, this beautiful Sufi prayer, the Litany of the Sea, becoming part of the mariner's spiritual toolkit. But it's really in those later handbooks, the 19th century ones, the Rahmanijat. That's where this synthesis becomes incredibly rich and explicit.
So what were in these Rahmanijats? More than just star charts, I take it.
Oh, much more. They show this amazing continuity, often quoting the old masters like Ibn Majid, showing that direct lineage of knowledge. But they also incorporated newer European technical developments, things like solar declination tables, giving precise sun positions, and traverse tables for calculating position changes.
So a real mix of old and new for the time.
Exactly, a fusion. But the Islamic synthesis is where it gets really fascinating. Well, the whole way they describe the cosmos, the cosmography, was often framed using verses from the Quran. So the heavens themselves had this added layer of spiritual meaning.
Okay.
You might find dialogues about the universe attributed to the prophet Jesus in these navigation manuals.
Really? In a sailing handbook?
Yeah. And specific sections dedicated to the complex calculations needed to find the Qibla accurately from anywhere at sea. Plus, moral guidance drawn from Islamic ethics, Sometimes even advice on, like, finding a good wife.
You're kidding. Advice on marriage.
Seriously. And because so many people traveled by sea for the pilgrimage to Mecca, you had detailed guides for the rituals of Hajj and Umrah, devotional poems too, and even the windrows, that circular diagram showing directions. It often evolved to show the Kaaba right there in the center.
Wow, the Kaaba at the center of their directional system. That's powerful imagery.
It really sums up the synthesis, doesn't it? This nautical literature became this incredible blend of the practical, the geographical, the technical, with the spiritual and the religious dimensions of their lives. It really reflected how Muslim sailors connected all these diverse regions through trade, through pilgrimage, maybe, embodying that Quranic idea of Muslims as a middle nation, bridging different worlds.
Amazing. Okay, let's steer north now, towards colder waters. The Vikings, their navigation is legendary too, isn't it? Reaching Iceland, Greenland, even North America. How on earth did they manage that?
Viking navigation, yeah, it's another captivating story. A mix of really practical skill, sharp observation, and maybe some tools that sound almost mythical, like the sunstone.
Oh, the sunstone. That always pops up. Sounds like something straight out of a saga. What exactly do we think it was?
Well, the hypothesis, and it is still debated, is that they might have used certain crystals, maybe calcite or something called cordierite or tourmaline. These crystals have a peculiar property. They polarize light.
Polarized light, meaning?
Meaning they can filter light waves so they oscillate in a single plane. And the key idea is that this property could, potentially, help you find the sun's position, even when it's hidden by thick clouds, or even just below the horizon at dawn or dusk.
So you hold up this crystal, and you can somehow see where the hidden sun is. How would that actually work?
The theory goes something like this. You'd rotate the crystal while looking through it at the sky. The way the light appears through the crystal changes. When two different light paths you see through it look equally bright, that point is supposed to indicate the direction of the sun.
Oh.
And what's intriguing is you find these kind of cryptic references in some medieval texts in the sagas that hint at a special stone for finding the sun. Plus, modern experiments have shown that, yeah, it's actually feasible to navigate using crystals like this, at least under certain conditions.
That is just wild. A crystal is a navigation tool, but they wouldn't have relied just on that, surely, assuming it even existed and worked reliably.
Oh, definitely not. Celestial navigation was still key, especially the North Star, Polaris. That was crucial for keeping a steady course northwards, wasn't it? Keep Polaris steady off your beam, you stay on track.
Right. Polaris is the constant.
And like the Polynesians, they were keen observers of nature. Bird migrations, for instance.
Yeah.
Seeing certain birds heading towards land could be a vital clue.
Okay. Any other tools they might have had? Less mythical ones?
Well, they probably used simpler things, too. Maybe a basic sun compass using shadow direction. And almost certainly lead lines.
Lead lines.
Yeah, just a weight on a rope marked at intervals. You drop it overboard to measure the water depth. That tells you if you're getting close to shore or maybe nearing dangerous shallows.
So again, it's this blend, knowing nature intimately, plus some clever, maybe rudimentary but effective tools. Enough to cross the North Atlantic. It's still mind-boggling without GPS pinpointing everything.
It really is. It just highlights their deep connection to the environment and how they interpreted it. And all these navigators we've talked about, Polynesian, Islamic, Viking, they were all essentially working with the concept of latitude, weren't they? Finding their north-south position, even if they didn't use the same mathematical grid we do now.
Right, latitude. Part of that basic grid, latitude and longitude that we use to map the whole planet. How did these ancient methods connect to that fundamental idea?
Well, at its heart, navigation is about having a frame of reference, especially for long distances. Close to shore, you use landmarks, right? Obvious stuff.
Sure.
But out in the open ocean, you need something more abstract, more universal. And as we saw, people like the ancient Phoenicians and the Polynesians we started with, they figured out how to use the sky, the sun, the stars, to find their latitude, measuring angles, basically.
These simple tools sometimes.
Yeah, things like the gnomon, which is really just a vertical stick whose shadow you watch, or later, more sophisticated things in the aero world, like the kamal, specifically for measuring star altitudes.
It all loops back, doesn't it, to this incredible human ability to observe keenly, to spot patterns in nature, and, crucially, to pass that vital knowledge down the generations. It really makes you pause and think about what we might be losing with our total reliance on tech now.
It's a powerful thought, yeah. These skills we've been discussing can seem almost like superpowers to us now, glued to our screens. This deep environmental literacy, this intimate feel for how the stars, the sea, the wind, the birds, all interconnect. It's a legacy that, well, it feels fragile in our rapidly changing world.
It definitely makes you think about navigation differently, not just as, plotting a course from A to B on a map,
Exactly.
but as this dynamic relationship with everything around you, a constant process of reading the world.
Precisely. It's an active sensory engagement. And the research really shows this, The sheer diversity of landscapes humans have lived in is mirrored by this incredible diversity in how they learn to navigate those landscapes. It's a richness that maybe modern cognitive science doesn't always fully appreciate.
And understanding these old ways, maybe even preserving parts of them. It isn't just about history, is it? Could there be actual value today, especially with, everything changing environmentally?
I think so, absolutely. Looking at these methods isn't just about admiring past ingenuity. It could genuinely inform how we navigate the future, maybe find more sustainable ways to relate to our planet, learn from that deep ecological wisdom.
So as we've sailed through time today, from the brilliance of the Polynesian star compass, through that amazing synthesis in Islamic navigation, to the maybe mythical Viking sunstone, what we've really seen is this remarkable human ingenuity, this profound understanding of the natural world.
Absolutely. Skills that hold real lessons for us today, I think.
Yeah.
What stands out most for me is just the reminder that for thousands of years, people crossed vast, dangerous oceans by developing this incredibly detailed, holistic knowledge of their environment. It wasn't just about wayfinding. It was about being deeply tuned in to the rhythms of the planet and the cosmos.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Considering how much we lean on technology now, what can we really learn from these ancient ways about our own sense of space, our own connection, or maybe disconnection from the world around us? And thinking ahead as the environment shifts, how important might preserving or even reviving some of this traditional knowledge actually become?
Important questions to ponder.
Indeed. And like those amazing mariners charting their way by starlight, your own journey of discovery doesn't have to stop here. Why not set your sights on the All Sorts podcast over on YouTube? There's a whole constellation of conversations waiting for you there.
Yeah, check it out.
Please like our videos, share them with your fellow explorers, and definitely subscribe so you never miss a new voyage into the unknown with us. And hey, chart a course back through our archives. We've got loads of past deep dives, a real treasure trove waiting for your ears.
That's right.
And come join our fleet. Follow the All Sorts podcast on X, Instagram, and Threads. Become part of our growing community of curious minds, all of us navigating this vast ocean of information together.